Pioneer brand canola with Optimum Gly, the highest yielding glyphosate-tolerant trait on the market. What's next in canola happens here. Along with extra time and lower instances of unpredictable weather, there are a variety of benefits that come with fall ESN application. Learn more at smartnitrogen.com.
Welcome to The Truth About Ag. Welcome to the Truth About Ag podcast under the Real Ag Media Network. I now get to say that. I like that. That makes me feel important all of a sudden. Remember to like, share, subscribe, comment. Also, now that we are under Real Ag, please reach out and watch any of Sean Haney's podcasts that are on there as well as our podcast is now featured on the website. So have a look. Shameless plug. I also want to plug Farmer Coach here. November cohort start up. We got the foundations program, the executive program, as well as the master's program. So please look at farmercoach.ca if you are interested in some continuous education this winter and into next year. And then obviously Maverick Ag. If you are looking for some consulting services or anything on the financial side, please reach out. So now that I've got that over with, welcome back.
I'm half back anyway. I don't know if my brain's at full capacity, but we'll find out.
How was the first weekend off?
Well, straight to kids hockey. That, as most people our age can probably relate to it. I'm not sure what keeps me busier, the farm or kids sports, but it was good. It's good.
Finished up on Friday. Were you actually there, or were you at kids sports on Friday?
I was at kids sports on Friday as we finished up.
First time ever you haven't been on the farm as they rolled the last combine?
Yep. Yeah, you'd have to go back to like elementary school.
And what's the feeling? I want you to tell the audience what it feels like not to be involved in that last strip.
It's kind of a teeter-totter between proud and guilt, and it bounces back and forth.
Well, since I haven't had you on in forever, we're gonna dive into a few things, but I wanted to start with the Real Ag, obviously our deal with Sean. What are your thoughts, I guess? I mean, I know what I think, but I haven't got your thoughts on here live, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got a lot of respect for what Sean and Real Ag has done and the reach that they have specifically in North America, some of the stuff in the US, and I think we relate pretty good to how Sean covers most agriculture topics, right? He's logical in how he covers them. Same with the rest of his crew, and they try to see both sides. And then, to be honest, they actually usually have an opinion. They don't just cover both sides and leave it at that. So I think that relates pretty well with us. And I mean, I think I can't even remember. Was it last week? I had a blog about the conspiracy of awesomeness that a friend Kim McConicle showed me, and it follows that path of, I'm just kind of sick of listening to the complaining in agriculture, and let's find a way to collaborate and make it better and move forward. And this is one of those things. We think they do a good job and started talking, and why wouldn't we do a good job together?
No, I totally agree. I think part of it was just the amount of content he puts out. I mean, I didn't have a clue once we kind of started talking to him, and then once I did some of the due diligence, I mean, not only their network across North America, but just the amount of shows he puts out. I mean, every time I speak somewhere, I run into him. I mean, he's got to be on a plane most of the days in a year. So I respect what he's doing, and I expect him kind of sharing the story of ag as well as you said, getting the positive side of it, not just focusing on all the negatives. So yeah, I'm happy we're on board. And obviously, if any industry members out there want to throw a little money his way towards this podcast, please feel free to reach out to Sean. That was part of this whole dream was to actually get something back in return, not just get on here and bitch every week. So that leads me into my next one. Since I was talking to Mr. Haney this week, he noticed we did some cleanup at the CAMA. So the Canadian Agriculture Marketers Alliance, I think we 5 out of 6 that we, I guess, put an application in for, we're finalists for. And I looked at the list, and it's up against guys like Bayer and some of the big industry leaders. What are your thoughts?
You're putting me on the spot on this one. I mean,
I didn't give you any prep on this one.
Yeah. So once again, it's that fine line. I mean, you know me good enough to know that I'd actually just prefer to hide out in the middle of nowhere and nobody really know me. But at the same time, that doesn't get shit done in today's world, right? Marketing and having a brand and having a PR strategy and having an opinion on things is not only a big part of how we recruit people, right? You were out at the farm this year. I mean, if anything, we had too many people. I don't think we did because we always had everybody busy, but if anything, which is not something we hear from most of our consulting clients, and that PR strategy and marketing strategy all ties to that. And no different than a lot of the original kind of relationships we have with a lot of the big companies we deal with. It's partly because they heard one of us speak, or they saw one of the blogs, or they saw the podcast and they reach out because we have an opinion on stuff and it's known. Now, does everybody always agree with that opinion? No, and nor do I care, right? Like that's the joy of having an opinion is I get to talk to people that have vastly different opinions than me, and it actually kind of gives me new ideas. I mean, you've been around me long enough too that's really what I enjoy is good debate and hearing the other side, because that's how my brain works. I need to hear what other people think in order to kind of find my path and the farm's path forward. So, when it comes to this, I guess we're big on making sure that people on our team get noticed for what they do a good job of. And so our PR team kind of urged us to apply. And if someone takes initiative to want to do something and they've done a good job of it, why stop them? I guess that's kind of my answer, right? It's no different if the guys on the farm want to go coach their kids hockey, or if the girls in the office, we'll use Steph as an example, right? Has a real passion for volunteering and the foundation. I don't really do much with the foundation. I agree to what we're going to write a check to every Monday, but she does all of it. And so it's exciting that we got people that are part of our team that care about it and want to be part of the CAMA Awards. And I hope, to be honest, that they win, because you're right. It's pretty cool that a little farm in the world of big business is going toe to toe with, let's be honest, people with a lot bigger marketing budgets than us.
What budget, right? No, and that's how I saw it. I saw it more for the team. I mean, for those that don't know, I mean, if you saw the amount of hours that not only our communications team, but our back end staff and everybody doing the blogs, the Instagrams, I mean, anybody who knows how many channels we have and is getting sick and tired of seeing every post that comes out, that takes a full army of a team. So this is kind of the one time a year where we get some of the, recognition to them back on this. And even, I mean, we're even in one of the finalists for the Truth About Ag podcast. So that makes me even proud that in 10 months we've pushed it enough that they deem us to at least hit the finalists. And I guess we'll see where we land after that. So,
yeah, I mean, I think on the marketing in the last 2-3 months, I'd say my two most exciting stories or proud stories are, one, I know for a fact that a couple of the New Zealand kids working for us, we love the New Zealand kids. And we've had people from New Zealand come work on and off since I was 8 or 9 years old. In fact, one of them phoned. The first time he came was when I was 10, and his daughter and one of her friends are probably coming to work for us next year or the year after. So it's been that long. But two of them said they literally typed in the computer, "We want to work on a great farm in Canada." And Hebert Grain Venture showed up at the top. That's why we do marketing, right? It's not for a whole bunch of other reasons. And then the second one is I've had a number of direct contacts on the podcast from farmers in Canada. They usually lean into in the efficiency and how we run things. But I've had some guys out of the US saying, how do we grow? And they're in a different ballgame than us, but it's a great question when they start asking back and forth, right? But then, to be honest, my real favorite ones are, I've had some good friends out of the oil industry, out of the finance industry, reach out and say, they listen every week, and they think some of the leadership ideas we have is what just excites them to either use for themselves or their people. And so those are always great to receive, because our world is real easy to criticize, right? You and I could go through all the comments of people that say, get your faces off the podcast and off YouTube and quit speaking. But to be honest, we just really don't care, right? Yeah. But to get the good feedback is always, everybody likes good feedback. So those are kind of two things on why I think it's pretty important.
Well, and the big one to me, I mean, you sent me the DM because he couldn't get a hold of me, but he sent it to you, and it was a farmer that had literally taken his first time ever leaving the farm during, busy season, and he moved his kid into university here, college, and he said he came back, and guess what? the farm didn't burn down. He realized, I mean, it's that first aha moment. We've talked about it in blogs and stuff, and stories like that are what actually excites me about doing this. It's not talking about numbers, and I love the guests and stuff, but honestly, it's other producers getting stuff out of this. That's what we do most of the stuff we do for. So that I appreciate it a lot. So,
well, and I mean, it's that everyone wants to say that agriculture is different and farming's different, and you have to be there all the time, and you're going to be busy. And I mean, I said right at the start of the episode, I mean, I wasn't there for the last day of harvest. My crew doesn't need me. Most, I can be pretty helpful, but most days they don't need me. They grow more if I'm not here. But I mean, even with everything we do, I still feel guilty as hell that I'm at my kids' hockey tournament instead of at the farm. So, and you go back to Simmons's podcast, right? Did I choose farming or did farming choose me? It's a guilt problem in this world of agriculture. And unless at the end of the day, when you're, well, whether you're Dallas's age or you're 60 to 70, when most people retire, if you want nobody to be around you because you're grumpy and work all the time, or if you're not big enough for somebody to come home to, there's only one person to look at, and that's in the mirror. So if you don't want those two things, you got to find a way to get over the guilt and build a team around you that you can be proud of. And you're right. That was a great DM. The guy said it. Basically, he said, I had never left. And this time I left, was guilty as hell when I left. And when I came back, I couldn't have been prouder. Right? There's still a lot of good people in this world that when you give them a chance to step up, they'll step up and they'll even surprise you. But because of the world we're in, where you can check on everybody by a text message or a piece of technology every 15 seconds, and they can ask you a question every 10 seconds, we forgot how good some people still are, right? And I think that's a big part of why you and I enjoy doing what we're doing and telling our story is like, we don't think we're better than anybody. We just know we've made a lot of mistakes. And because we refuse to fail, we learn from them and change how we do it. Like, that's really all we do any different. So then why does the next guy need to feel guilty going to drop his kid off at college or going to hockey? Or, to be honest, you're still going to feel guilty, but why does he have to feel not even good enough to tell people he feels guilty? Right? That's the typical agriculture way.
Well, and I laugh because I was doing up presentations for this winter, obviously for the speaking rounds, and I came across a meme on Facebook the other day, and obviously the Cowboys had a beautiful start to the season of whatever you want to call it, 1-2 or 0-2 or whatever they were. And there's a meme of Jerry Jones sitting in pads and helmet, and he goes, "You know what? I'm just going to do this shit myself." And that I said, there, I'm putting that in my presentation because that's agriculture right there. Yep. As soon as times get tough, I'm just going to do it myself. And that's the message. I mean, we've obviously said it a million times, so I don't want to hit it again, but that's why we do this.
For sure.
Okay. So I asked you what you did in the weekend, but post-harvest hangover. I've said the word many times. I've written blogs on it. Is it a real thing, and how do you manage it?
Oh yeah, it's real. So I mean, we can define it again for those that don't know, but every farmer knows what it is. The minute you get done seeding or harvest, productivity drops. I used to think it used to drop from 100% down to 70 or 80%. Nowadays, I actually think what happens is everybody gets so geared up for seeding and harvest, even everybody on your team, not just you, that you actually ramp productivity up to about 120%, right, in harvest and seeding. You accomplish things that really most businesses don't even understand how much we accomplish in those 20 days for seeding and 40-ish days for harvest. So then it comes back down to normal, and all you can see is how much stuff you have left to get done in the fall and when's it going to snow, right? And I've said this lots of times, like, I despise from the day we're done harvest until the day it snows, because I'm more about a plan, and you can have a plan, but you don't know what the deadline is, right? And so there's a never-ending motivation that you have to keep everybody going. So yeah, it's real. I think what we've tried to accomplish is have more and more people around through the growing season, so that when we're running at that 120% productivity, doesn't just have to be the combines. I mean, I think we hauled 15, 16,000 ton of grain while we were combining. We seeded 4,000 acres of rye. We floated 10 or 11,000 acres of the 25, 30 we need to do. We're half or 3/4 done harrowing, where normally we haven't even started by the time we're done harvest, or we've just got going. The sprayers are, a third done already. And even our dirt work crew was running for 3-4 weeks during harvest. It was just, if we can get good people, just say yes and run more crews. And then, but there's always a nuance, something you learn. And I've always kind of known this, but if you have one guy away from the harvest pack, they're pouty, right? If you have a crew of people, they're not pouty, but they still don't always feel part of the harvest pack. So, we've had to really use our managers to help kind of go around and keep all those other crews going and make them know that everything they're doing is important and all that stuff. And to be honest, you really start to search for the guys. I use kind of Kiwi Senior for us, right? He likes to be out on his own with just one other guy doing his thing, right? You look for those people that maybe think the harvest crew is a bit chaotic, which you get 20 people all in one little group, it can be, right? So I think that's kind of how we're trying to manage it, is trying to just have that much more done by the time harvest is, so it doesn't feel overwhelming as you look forward, and then kind of ease back into it instead of just staying, at peak the whole time.
So you're telling me running the combine's not the most important job on the farm?
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, though. I was looking at combine data the other day, and the one thing about data is it lets you know how you can be better and the variance between operators. But you and I we'll have an interesting podcast on that now that we got 2 years on the X9s and what we call a slightly below average year and then an above average year, because it's not just acres per hour, it's bushels per hour, right?
Yeah.
And so we'll go back and do 3 years on the S's and 2 years on the X's, and I think there's some pretty interesting things to debate, not only between the two series of combine, but between operators, between technology. I mean, so we're finding on the X that once we get them dialed in, 50-foot headers at 4.8 mile an hour might be too much for some people. They're holding back on the stick, even though the combine can handle it. And that doesn't sound like a big deal, but probably 3 acres an hour, 4 acres an hour on a machine, and you're combining 12 hours a day is 50 acres a day. You're going to combine for 40 days. That's 2,000 acres of machine. Right. So there's some nuances there on how you get people trained up. But yeah, I think I ran a combine for maybe 400, 300 acres out of the total. And I would say that's kind of the other thing we learned is that I'm on the trucking crew, but we're probably going to pull me right off that next year if we can have enough people. And my job is going to be more just to rotate around and give people half days off so I can. It's hard, I find. We always say we're going to move some of our best operators around into other machines, but it's hard because you kind of they get settled in. So it's probably my job that, take the morning off. I'm going to run your machine till noon and make sure, because not all your operators have the same feel, right? Like if you've been in a combine lots, if there's a rotor tine bent, or you can just feel it. And so that's probably my job next year, is just kind of go from my office to one machine and then a different machine and then truck for a bit and then maybe go to the sprayers, and somewhere between a rover and a back rubber. I don't know which one.
So you started as a gopher and now you're going to end your career as a gopher.
Yeah, 100%.
Circle of life. So, harvest debrief. What went right? What went wrong?
Yeah, well, for us, cereal yields went right. I think we're number 2 or 3 in history. Canola was average. So, that's going to, I'll roll that into the wrong after. But, so people went right. We had more people than we've ever had. We were harvesting a 25% expansion year, and it was a big crop. So really it was more like a 40% expansion. Our people did great. There's obviously the odd little hiccup here and there, but in general, the people side of our business impresses me all the time. For us, the X9s are good combines. For us, we really don't have much downtime. Now, the little, you'll have an O-ring issue here or a chopper issue there, and our mechanics are really good. So the harvest C-can, where we buy all of last year's parts and have our own shop on wheels, went right. It saves us tons of downtime because we just fix everything live.
Also our number one post on Instagram.
yeah, everybody likes those videos. Well, and the neat thing is you can usually work with your dealership that you just return that C-can in the fall, and they put it back kind of in their inventory and then bring it back to you next year. So then you really know a true expense. Because I always get Evan a little excited when I go fill that C-can, because there's $100,000 of parts in there. So it jumps repairs, but then after harvest we return most of it, and it smooths it out. But that was a big win. Some of our key guys, so like say Travis, my mechanic, used to be in a grain cart. He got out and he was half trucker, half mechanic. Huge difference. But to be honest, he's got a young guy underneath him straight out of high school that loves doing mechanic work. if you asked Trav, he'd say that was the number one change in his life, right? He could drop a semi off at the shop. That young guy would service it, grease it, change a U-joint. Then we pull it back in the fleet and Trav could stay trucking. He didn't have to fix all the time, right? Yeah. Even Chad, we had Chad everywhere, right? He was on the trucks. He was in a combine. He'd go spraying. He'd whatever. So just having some really good operators that you can move around. And the key guys, Josh and Dustin and Louie and our other key combine operators, they just stay in combines. But those rover floaters that can run anything really well, even Sean, he trucks and runs a Traco. He was in the combine for a few days too. Like, it's just that cross training and being a good operator at everything is a big deal. So those were probably the best things. I mean, the fact we hauled, I can't even remember, 16 or 18,000 ton of grain. I mean, we went from a projected 53 grain bags down to 4. So that's a real easy way to keep your team motivated. To truck like crazy while you're combining is having that many less grain bags.
Well, and big one on that, I just want to interrupt you. I just finished a blog and shout out to Mr. Jeff Warkentine, our COO, because tell you the truth, the 2 days I was out there, that was my number one takeaway from, I got to drive a semi, which was nice. Got a little stress-free time for a couple of days. But then I also got to watch him work, and being able to manage 22 people, just 22 people doing the same job is one thing. But being able to manage when they're not only 22 people, but they're 100 kilometers apart, they're running 3 or 4 different crews, they're running 3 or 4 different implements. At the same time, we've got more semis than most trucking companies have running full-time into the elevators throughout a series of 3-4 days straight.
Yep.
It was quite impressive to watch. I will give him props that he does something that I know I could never do. Yep. And I solely believe that.
Yep.
So I'll give him a lot of props on that. That was amazing to watch.
Well, and let's be honest, it's why we see most farms hit their ceilings, is because the key manager hits peak capacity. Because I wouldn't be able to deal with all of our suppliers and, the couple phone calls with you and everything else we have going on if I had to take every call from all of our team too. It doesn't work. You can't do a good job of it. I mean, as good as me, I'm 3 hours of my day, I'm trading. I don't have time to read on trading if I have to answer all my guys' calls, right? And I don't have time to deal with the lawyers and the accountants and let's be honest, in today's world, like, you're dealing with banks every week of the month, right?
Yep.
So that peak capacity and knowing how to delegate, right? And we're even getting excited about the level underneath Jeff and how much we're able to hand off. And that'll be part of our manager meeting this fall, is how they stepped up this year, and we need to give them another step on the ladder to step up, right?
Well, and I like some of the step up / training, and I've seen you and Jeff both do it, is it comes across as almost a demotion to them of why am I doing this? And then all of a sudden they realize that no, that job is more important than sitting in the combine.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds selfish, but like, the real way I can test delegation is how much easier did you make my life? And so if you're a good combine operator, you didn't make my life a whole bunch easier if I already have 4 or 5 good ones and I just need 2 others. Now, if you can get out of a combine and go manage 3 peripheral crews that are 100 kilometers away or 50 kilometers away, and Jeff and I never get a call to help fill a fertilizer truck or take them fuel or they need a tire, now you've changed my life. Yeah. And if you think, I don't care what job you're in, you might not have direct access to the CEO like my crew does, but really, your direct report above you, your manager, or senior manager, or vice president, or whatever, the easier you can make their life, the more important you are. And that doesn't mean you're the best salesman or the best combine driver. It means, what are you doing to reduce the amount of phone calls and questions they get? And that in any part of this world, that's how you become important. Because obviously, if they're giving you more phone calls and more ability to make decisions, you're also making them money, right? But everyone thinks you have to make them lots of money to be important. No, usually it's because all the little things you do right makes them lots of money, right? And I think it's just an easy way to think about things, where I think in a lot of times their farms are fighting that, I want part of your job. I'm not trying to make your life easier. It's maybe the wrong way to go about it, right? Yeah, I think on that, if we were to go into kind of what didn't work, I mean, I don't know about anybody else that's going to be listening, but like, we started on August 9th or 10th, and the rain and humidity was atrocious in August in the first
40 days out the window?
In the first 2 weeks. We probably combined less than 40 days, but we sure didn't finish in 40. But like, the rain and the humidity was atrocious. And when you combine that with a huge cereal crop, it was one of the harder harvests I've probably ever been part of. Crop had started going down because it was so heavy, and was tough chewing all the time. We were running the dryer steady. And then I just hate stopping and starting. Like, I despise it. So you get a rain day for a day and a half, and then you'd have to go, and you can't get in a rhythm. I think the canola companies need to step up and have some real frank conversations this winter. And they're not going to like me for saying this, but I've been pretty open with my opinion, is that for the last few years, when we were maybe a little shorter rain and canola found a way to kind of still be the number one yield on the farm and made everybody happy, they were pretty good at beating their chest and telling us how they had great genetics and canola was saving the agriculture world. And then on a year like this, I don't know, and I don't know all areas of the province, but southeast and east half, cereal yields were phenomenal. And for instance, I grow Copeland barley. It's old genetics. You can't tell me it's got new genetics. And canola was just barely average. In fact, some fields were pretty disappointing. Some were decent. Nothing was great. We're going to have some pretty frank discussions with them why do I have to grow 5 or 6 varieties to feel comfortable? I never used to have to. I could grow one because it was the best one, or two. And yes, we didn't get much rain in July, but we got our 11 inches or 10 inches throughout the year, and the cereals found a way to do it. I'm not very happy. And to be honest, I'm not. There'll be some pretty frank discussions around what varieties of canola we're going to grow and how we're going to go about it, and kind of some of our expectations. Because, like I said, I wouldn't have those discussions if I hadn't kind of heard the last 3 years how awesome it was and how their genetics are saving us. So I think it's pretty important we do the same thing back.
Well, and let's be frank. If commodity markets don't move, average canola yields at $12.50 don't work.
They don't work in today's cost structure.
Nope. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to pull you out of us. I want to do a little bit more for the audience today. So we're halfway through, let's call it. So Strat Coach, I was there 2 weeks ago, I guess, in Toronto, and I like one of their tools. It's called Past, Present, Future. So I want you to, since you put on your thinking hat for a second, give me the top 3 things you're proud of that you did over the last entire growing season, not just harvest. What are the top 3 things? It can be financial, operational. What were the top 3 things that you would place on that pedestal of, we did this right this year?
Like overall for the farm, not
overall.
So number one would be our overall people strategy, how we pulled expected more of our managers, but also hired more than maybe we ever had in some of the New Zealanders and co-op students. Number 2 would be that we've done a lot on how we're dealing with debt and trying to get some of the same deals that other industries have when it comes to both real estate and equipment. And I don't know all the numbers off the back of my head, but it significantly changes our annual cash flow, and doesn't change our equity. Obviously, our equity is good. And it's just a matter of, in a world where we've been in the last 10 years with equipment and land kind of increasing in price. I've said it lots on the show. I don't like a bunch of equity in equipment, and I'm not sure I'm ever going to pay off all my land if I want to keep growing. I might, but I need to have it set up that I don't care if I do. So that one, cash is always king. And then 3, what would be my third one? I think third one would be what we really noticed is when we pivoted to 40,000 from 30, I really had to allocate more of my time to how we market grain. So Jeff and I carved that role up. Jeff takes care of all the cash sales and deliveries. I take care of all the future sales and timing. So I'll make the decision on kind of what price we want, which, as we've shared, I'm pretty sure we have a scorecard that once it hits a 20% ROI, we're really interested in selling, most likely going to do some. If it's more than that, we're going to sell more. So I'll make the decision on kind of when we need to sell and at what prices. Jeff will make all the calls on to get the cash price and the basis he likes, because he needs to have trucks delivering basically 40 of the 52 weeks of the year. And then I'll deal, if we can't get to the price we like, I deal with the rest on futures. It took a while to get used to, because I used to do it all. But Jeff's really good at that side. He used to work in the elevator industry, and it maybe surprised me, to do a good job of trading futures, how much time and how much reading and a person does. Like I said, it's probably 30% of my job description.
Yeah. So for me, I would say this is the first year we've actually broke down cost of production as far as we did.
Yep.
I mean, we went down not just to the acre, not just to the quarter, we went right down to the bushel. And that came straight out of TPAP. I'm not going to lie. January, Jeff and I left that program, and both of us had that on our list of what's the number? Because let's be serious, we've gone through some pretty good pricing the last few years, and that we knew it wasn't going to last. And I'd love to tell everybody we had a crystal ball, but we didn't. All we did was, as you said, we had a scorecard. We looked at it weekly. We had the 20% return. We had the break even. And honestly, we did more marketing than most of the farms I know for that reason. It wasn't that we knew what was coming. So nobody knows what's coming down. I mean, let's be serious, in geopolitical today, there is no way of knowing. But it was, we made a strategy of this is when we were going to sell, and we sold. So that,
let's be honest, the only marketing thing that I would give us a failing grade on is wheat. And it was partly because we never on some of our north land that tends to not get as much rain.
Yeah.
Right. And we were budgeting a 50-55 bushel yield, and it ran 75-80. And so our 15% sold, or our 30% sold, turned into 12 to 15. And it was an area where our canola ran, 75% of normal last year. So we kind of shouldn't get stung by the past, but we got stung by the past.
Well, and the kicker was we never did hit even at the new yields, it still was hard to hit the 20%. So it still would have been up in the air whether we actually, not that we wouldn't have sold into a lesser price just because we knew we had canola. Because I mean, the whole farm you're looking for 20%. It's not just per crop, but it allows you to play the game. If we're at 30% on canola, can we pop down to 10 at wheat and so on? So that was my number one. My number two was equipment, but for a different reason. So you covered the debt side. I'm going to cover the cost side. So by the stretch, and we've talked about it, we didn't take on a whole bunch of capital on the last expansion. But what most don't know is that dropped our cost of production by $50 to $60 an acre. So we took on land, which most would say, no, you're driving your prices up. How do you make money? Well, by taking on the land, we made our economic units on our equipment so much more efficient that we still came out 45 to $50 ahead of where we were on cost of production. And I think going into next year, that's going to be crucial, because looking at the numbers out of all the data, I mean, I've seen Manitoba's break evens were 600 plus on average. That's not going to work unless something drastically changes. And I'm not saying it's not going to, because again, no crystal ball, but right now, the cost structure we have, I am ecstatic with. It allows me to plan a lot easier.
But I think cost structure, I mean, if you go to the world of sports, right, and they always say there's two things you can have control over. That's effort and attitude, right? And I would go to farm management. What are the two things there's three things you can have control over: effort, attitude, and cost structure. I can't have control over my yields. I can't have control over the commodity prices. I can't have really control over the input prices. But what I can do is I can have lots of effort to be better. I can have a good attitude, and I can handle my fixed cost structure. And can you change it rapidly in 1 year? Well, not really, unless you expand a whole bunch. But you can have 5-year plans to have that trending down or up, or however that works. And as you said, I mean, like everybody needs to understand, consulting client to consulting client, farm to farm that we look at, there are guys pulling up to a field with $100 different cost structures, and running in. And I don't want to say they're running 9600s and old, TRs. No, they're running the exact same equipment, and they run it more efficient over more acres, etc. And $100 an acre really adds up.
And then the third one, I think, whether you want to call it strategy, whatever you want to call it, it was how we pivoted. And what I mean by that is most farms, and I mean, I live in the Twitter realm because that's where I get most of my content from. And sometimes it gets tiring because most farms don't deal with problems correctly. We have indirect and direct, and then just out of our control. Well, most of the stuff, if you actually sit down and you call it out of your control, it's not out of your control.
Yeah.
So whether it was the rail strike, whether it was, now the port discussion and the commodity drop, all of those, everybody talks as uncontrollable, right? They're outside anything we can do. But what they don't realize is that how you react to those is the control portion of it. So the reason I was down driving semi was because the rail strike, we knew they were going to start pushing back on contracts. We wanted to get as much hauled as fast as we could. Like, those were plans that came within a day of knowing what was going to happen. Same as the barley. Once we realized what the barley yield was, even back to when your brother was doing silage and we saw, one of the biggest massive silage crops we've ever seen, we said, okay, the barley market is not going to support what's coming. So then what did we do? We went out and sold more barley. we took a lesser price, but we also knew what was going to come down the pipe. So call it strategy, call it whatever you want to, whether it's just keeping our foot on the pulse. It was those deviations that I think a lot of farms miss. Of they're too busy looking and saying I can't control anything, to sit back and actually say what can I control, and that was big, because I don't know, I was not part of many farms that could do that, including my own. And what we've been able to do is just that's been one of my biggest ones of the past.
Yeah, it's just, it's like sport. It's just calling an audible. In order to call an audible, you have to have baseline information that you trust, right? So there's our cost of production and our 20% return. And you have to have slight bits of information that your competitors don't have. So we knew we were kind of combining first. We knew some yields. We knew that we could take a slightly less price to still hit, significantly over 20% return. And, you add in Jeff's knowledge of every kind of day a rail strike happens, it can push things back by a week. So we knew we were combining canola, nobody else was, and barley. So phone the elevators and see if they'll take contracts early before they go full, right? And they said yes. So it's just having information ready to make decisions live once you have your gut feel of what the outcome is going to be. But without the information, you can't make that decision, right?
Yeah. Top 3 things you're most excited about right now?
Like farm related or
whatever. I'm going to let you do both.
Yeah. So number one, I'd say both my kids hockey. So I talk about it lots. Hockey's, even though it's a lot of time and effort, it's kind of my break from life. I help coach both of them. My phone doesn't come with me. I just really love how kids, listen and don't lie to a coach. So you can test, human resource policies on kids really easily and get the truth versus adults. And to be honest, and learn different ways to motivate different people, because once again, kids show you, they smile or they don't smile when motivation's working right. And seeing my kids kind of live those dreams is lots of fun. So that's that's always my number one thing to look forward to over the winter. 2, it's probably going to come up. We did some equipment deals we didn't think we were going to. So kind of finishing up. We know that the numbers worked really well, but just finishing up the cash flow side of that and making next year's plan has me excited there. And 3, deep down, I'm kind of bullish a few of the markets. So some of them are running full carry. And obviously there's different political things that are going to take place all over the world in the next 3 months, whether that be tension in the Middle East and a couple of elections. So nobody has a crystal ball, but I think there will be small blips of opportunities for next year's crop, and we need to be prepared to capture them very quickly.
Hence why October 2nd, you're working on next year's pro forma for me.
Yeah. Yep.
For me, I would say number 1, I'm living my midlife crisis right now. I spent the weekend on a motorcycle and I got my learners. So it's everything in my power not to buy a bike right now for the 1 week we have left. That's number 1. Number 2, I guess Friday, Amy and I get to stand on stage at the Autism Services Gala and give a bit of a presentation on why we advocate and why we're doing the things. So it's nice to see that side of what we do with the PR. So anybody who doesn't follow, evanshout.com, some of the autism stuff. So it's nice to see that personal side take off a little bit. And then, excited is when you start looking forward to next year and you start doing projections and stuff, it's all about growth and it's all about what can we do instead of what did we just do. So it's nice to kind of draw the line in the sand and start looking forward instead of back. So that's probably my biggest one, is now I can stop looking at last year and where some of the failures and positives were, and now look at next year and with anticipation. So, and then the last one, top 3 things you're looking forward to for 2025.
2025. What? I always find the winter interesting because let's be honest, we've never once planned an expansion during the growing season for next year. They always happen October 15th through April 15th, and typically more December 1st through April 15th. So, you just never know the phone call you're going to get and the discussions you get to have there. So, I always look forward to those. They're fun, right? I look forward to just another kind of planning season with the team. Obviously, we got lots of grain and stuff to haul and the shop, but we'll do a couple of pretty important meetings with the manager group on, how they can step up more and where they want to, and keep pushing stuff down to make life easier for everybody. And then I think the last, despite me being in the combine and trucking and running around, you and I have had lots of conversations on kind of the new Maverick model and being more product-based versus service-based, which I think makes a lot more sense for farmers, and rolling that out and seeing the uptake and the value it can provide. That'd probably be my third thing.
Yeah, for me, I think the top three, obviously, I'm going back to TPAP in January. So after last year's drinking out of a fire hose, I'm quite excited for that. It left me a long list, and I'd like to say I'm through half of it, but I think that one was a big motivator for the year. So I'm looking forward to it just to get me shot out of a cannon for the year. Obviously, we've made some big changes on the Maverick side with the product listings and stuff. So that was big, just to see it come to fruition and getting ready for November, when I think we'll have everything in the website and everything ready to fly on it. And then, the last one, I mean, I could say Farmer Coach, I could say a lot of others. I think it's just going into 2025 with a positive right now, because I don't think a lot of people are. And for me, I'm not saying it's because we did anything different or anything better. I'm just saying there's always things to look at on the positive side. So for me, it's not looking at 2025 as, okay, how do we survive this? More, how do we pivot and thrive in this? So that was big.
For sure.
Okay, we're coming up on close to time, but you got 10 more minutes?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I want to keep you because I did want to get through this. And this one is definitely more for anybody listening on the producer side. I want to list out a few things, and I want you to give me your opinion on what guys should be doing for next year, and thoughts. And again, these are opinions, so don't take them to heart and go out and sell the farm or go out and leverage everything, guys. So there's my disclaimer. But
yeah.
So I'm just going to say a few things, and I want your opinion on going into next year. So capital planning for most farms.
Yeah, so capital planning, I mean, we talked about fixed costs already. I think number one, guys need to have a real good handle on what their fixed costs per acre are, and I wouldn't be doing very much of anything that increases those. I would, not saying that doesn't mean you can't buy something new, just got to make sure it's running over enough acres. Two, when it comes to that, we're keeping a pretty close eye on the used market. So, I mean, the new market, my personal opinion is it's going to stay where it is for two reasons. One, manufacturers just slow down plants, and two, I don't trust the Canadian dollar against the American dollar. But I don't believe the used market can stay where it is. So there's kind of two ways to capture that. One, you can flip into some newer stuff and stretch it out over 5-10 years to make sure that you don't get caught in it in the future, or two, be along for the ride and run your used stuff a lot longer. But yeah, it's just something I'd be real careful of right now is the used equipment market.
Yeah. And to be open with the guys, part of the reason we did the flip is because we did have the inflationary gains on some of the used stuff, and we didn't want to see those drop because, as you said, our assumption is it's dropping. So that was part of the discussion. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of other facets of it, but okay. Interest rate and debt planning.
Yeah, so I see interest rates trending down for at least the next 12 months. I'd like to see 18 to 24, but I'm not convinced. But I'd say 12 months, we should see a few more cuts. And I think what you're starting to see now is the 10-year rate starting to drop, not just the nearby. In the past, the nearby was getting cut, but the 10-year was staying pretty high. So I think we'll see some cuts on both the nearby and the 10-year. So, in that 12 to 24 month period, I think is going to be a pretty good time to start looking at locking in debt for long term again versus running more short term loans. And then, like I said, in the world of debt planning, I think people need to, probably worth spending the money to get your land appraised at current values compared to what the bank's using. I think there's a way to free up a lot of land you probably have tied up because they'll be significantly over collateralized based on current land values. And also same thing, like kind of do a bit of a, your own little used valuation. Ritchie Brothers site sells stuff all the time on your equipment line, and compare that to the debt load on it. Because like I said, I think there's some nuances there that you need to have in the back of your head. And it's always best to plan with banks in really good times when your equity is really high, not the other times.
Yeah, and I don't have a whole bunch to add there. Obviously, like you said, the 10-year rate's starting to move, which, I mean, Kelly and I, the last couple years with our consulting clients, and you can ask any of our clients, we've been pushing, do a 1-year, 2-year fix just to get into what's coming. And again, no crystal ball, but I'm kind of happy it did happen this way, because now we're going to have a whole bunch of guys renewing into what I figure is going to be the new low, I guess you could call it, the new norm. I hate those. Yep. I hate that phrase, but, and then, yeah, on the equity side, with the amount of increase in land, a lot of guys have never touched it. And I think you're right. It's a time, and some banks aren't going to let you just pull it off loans. Don't get me wrong. I've had these fights for the last couple of years with a few lenders, and I won't name any names, but it's at least a practice to see where you're sitting from an equity standpoint, so that you can have those conversations of what are my true ratios, and where's the farm actually sitting in that valuation, which then ties back into some of the transition, succession, all that, those discussions, which I'm going to pull you next. So succession, transition, what's coming and how fast?
Well,
here, let me phrase this before you start.
Okay.
2021 census, 12% of farms had a succession plan, and 60% of farms were over the age of 55, and that was in 2021.
Yeah. So I mean, we got to quit pulling the wool over our heads. I mean, consolidation's been happening fast already, right? And the reason it's happening fast is because there are no succession plans, right? And there's not enough revenue on a lot of farms for a succession plan, right? Like the easiest way to have a succession plan, and I mean, and we can throw toys around and talk about feelings, and everybody needs to be on the same page, but if you're broke, it don't matter, right? If there's only $5,000 at the end of every month of extra cash flow, and you need to pay mom and dad and son and daughter, 3 families can't live off that. So it's not going to work, right? So in my mind, if my revenue is not high enough, I'm finding a way to get that revenue high enough. That's the first step of a succession plan. Then I'm working into a succession plan because we have something to have success with. Like, that's why success is part of succession. It's not that everybody's happy. It's that we can actually be successful, because then we can be happy, right? And I'm not trying to be rude about it, but it's just the truth. And Evan, we would say that when there's no money to pay everybody for the hard, because you are going to work hard. I don't care what kind of a farm you're on. Yeah. A 1,000-acre farm, a 5,000 or 40, you're working hard. If you're not getting paid, you and your spouse are not happy. So, that's step one. Step two is, I mean, consolidation is just going to happen. And so if I'm a farm in that 3 to 5 to 8,000 acre range, I'm making sure the world knows my door's open to grow, because I know I need to get a little bit bigger, not a lot, but part of my succession plan, and hopefully the kids are the right age to do it, or I can hire some good people. You don't have to go chasing it, but just make sure the word's out there that, hey, if you're a 2,000 acre guy and you're looking at being done, come talk to me.
Right? And back to stats for you. 60% are over 55, 9% are under the age of 35.
Yeah.
So we have to turn 65% into 9% somehow without consolidation, because it's evil to have consolidation. If you guys can tell me the math on that, please do, because I just wrote another blog on, it's called, the great transfer of wealth, because it's going to be the biggest transfer of wealth in Canada, is watching 60% turn into 9. And you guys tell me how we do it, because that's the problem I'm having with the succession planning we're doing right now, is guys, land's too expensive, we can't do it, we're complacent, and this is an industry problem. Like, this is not going away.
Yeah. So my 2 biggest worries are, one, access to patient capital, because if you have to buy land versus rent it. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that in agriculture. Some of it's the law, some of it's the way the government has the rules, and some of it's just pure how cash flow works. And then 2 is management limitations. So, I mean, yeah, like there's even days I get up now and look at the total debt. I'm like, Jesus, right? But then I go back to bed and it's fine. But when it comes to the size of the expansions now, I mean, if you want to take over a 2,000 or 3,000 acre farm, it's a big number, right? By the time you buy the land and get the equipment, it's $9-10 million bucks. And some people just can't sleep with that, even if they know how to pay for it, right? So I think there's 2 things. One is access to patient capital, and 2 is this management transition and running it like a business, understanding the real estate side versus the farm side, and being comfortable with the ratios. Because if your ability to sleep is my operating line gets to 0 every year and my debt to equity is
What
0.5
is zero? What is
or
zero?
It's not going to work. And let's be honest, though, that in the old days, that's what bankers told people.
Yep.
Right? Don't have more than 50 cents a debt on your land, and preferably zero, and make sure your upline hits zero every year. Well, we also didn't have to pre-buy fertilizer in July back then, right? And land was worth 40 grand a quarter.
There's a reason key performance indicators were built and bank ratios exist is because the ratios matter, the number does not.
Exactly. So I think that's a huge part of where agriculture, needs to move forward. And so this winter, instead of spending time looking at a combine at the farm show that you're not going to buy, or the 15th new chemical on the market, maybe brush up on all the ratios that are important to the bank so that you understand them and how to utilize them to your benefit.
The last two were marketing and cost of production, but we kind of covered those in past, so I think we're probably tight on that. We've hit the 50-minute mark. I don't want to go too far over. So any final words?
No, I mean, I hope everybody else in the province finishes up harvest. I think probably southeast and east side is really all that's left, and northeast. But we feel that for a lot of areas it was a tough harvest, whether your yields were really good or not. And I think my final note would be, even if you were in an area, that had a tough go and where numbers are under cost of production, just make sure that that you were doing good things, and you can't always control yields and prices. So we would just urge you to have a plan and think through it, and don't blame it on yourself, and move forward. And there's lots of people out there to talk to about it.
I like it. All right. So once again, thank you. And to Real Ag Media, make sure you check out Sean Haney and obviously all the podcasts on that now that we're part of that network. And like, share, subscribe, comment, check out Farmer Coach and Maverick. And that's about all the plugs I can give for the night. So remember, that's the truth about ag. Thanks for joining us. The Truth About Ag podcast is a proud member of the Hebert Group, which includes Hebert Grain Ventures, Maverick Ag, and Farmer Coach. We appreciate the support. Lastly, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring the bell. And if you have questions for a future podcast, please leave in the comments below. Thanks for listening.